Powkiddy v90 is just the best whenever it comes to budget, retro, handheld emulation. But I want to know what's inside of it. So today we're just going to crack open the Powkiddy v90 and take a look at its internal hardware. They got these Nokia phone batteries. You can buy larger ones to get more battery life, but this is just the one that came with it. So under that, there doesn't appear to be any screws. It's a pretty cool look at the traces and stuff that they got going on. I don't know if that's the actual main board or what that is, but that's pretty cool looking. So with those 4 screws removed, the back comes right off and the triggers are falling everywhere. So that's going to be a nightmare. Alright, so this white that was behind the battery, it just seems to be an anti-conductive sticker that they put so that the battery wouldn't like rub on any of these contacts. So there's micro switches at the top for the dual triggers and dual bumpers. The SD card seems to be on the top side of the board, not the bottom. And then the headphone jack and USB-C port are both on the bottom of the board. The volume wheel also seems to be soldered to the top of the board. So the display seems to have a nice little ribbon cable, and the controls are built into this board. The speakers are actually soldered with little thin wires, so I'll have to be careful with that. Flip this guy up, set him free. See, so we're looking at, is it just the one screw? Possibly. Let's see. And that's a different screw from the others. Alright. I'm gonna have to be very careful with this so that I don't rip out the cables for the speakers. So the face buttons are all membrane buttons, not tactile click switches, and you can see that they use a sort of clear membrane, which I've never seen before. I've always seen the gray membrane, so that's pretty cool. The middle menu button right here is actually a micro switch, and then you can see the switch right there on the board, but all the others are just contact pads. I'm guessing that this right here is the main CPU. Powkiddy v90, it says All Winner Tech F1C100S, and then there's some smaller writing down there. I'm guessing that's the main power for the board, since there's literally no other large chips aside from that one. So yeah, I'm guessing that's like the CPU. Looks like there's one single screw to get the display free here, so let's work on that. Well, this screw looks different from all the others too. So if you mix up your screws, you're gonna have a really bad day with this thing. Alright, so I took that screw out, so now that guy's free. I'm gonna put this screw back for now, just so I can get to the screen without ripping the speakers off. So yeah, there's Phillips screws under each one of those covers. So I have one single one off, so I just got to do that 5 more times. So I've only taken off 2 of these little rubber covers, and they're both right here. And then I was looking at the triggers and bumpers and stuff. One of them has a little random red dot, but all the others have little clear dots. This trigger just has a random red dot, and it's a different shape than these ones. So it's definitely not the same thing. It's a little bigger. I'm not too sure why this one's red and all the others aren't. Alright, I finally got all these little rubber covers off. They're giving me a little bit of trouble. But honestly, the teardown hasn't been terrible so far. Alright, it's time for the Powkiddy to show me its secrets. See what we got back here. Yeah, I need to keep these screws separate. I've just been throwing them all together. Okay, so with those screws, this front panel should come loose. Maybe? No. Okay, that's not good. Okay. The glass panel in front of the display actually isn't glued to the display. We can peel off the screen protector here since I never got to it. Alright, I was freaking out earlier by getting dust behind the display, but it was just this little film here. But the display isn't glued to the top layer here, so I am going to not go any further than this. We can pull all the buttons and membranes out, but I think I'm just let them stay. The menu button already fell out somewhere around here. So here's what the main board of a Powkiddy v90 looks like, completely free from the chassis. Lots of gold contact pads for the face buttons. The only physical contact is with this switch here. Now it does seem like for every button there are little pads that lead to the traces, these little golden pads. So I imagine you can wire in your own controllers and do stuff like that. That's what it looks like to me. And they just already give you little pads to wire into, which is pretty cool. Yeah, the volume wheel and SD card are both mounted at the top of the board up here. And then on the back is where the speakers are actually wired to. And that's where your battery mounts into, and that's where your screen plugs in. In addition to that, your Type-C port, headphone jack, and switches are all soldered onto the back of the board. And of course it is pretty similar to a Game Boy Advance SP board. So with the Game Boy Advance SP, there's a single speaker and it places right here, and there's no soldering, it just kind of sits there and touches those pads. Two speakers on the Powkiddy here and they wire into the back. The Game Boy Advance SP's board is a little bigger in pretty much all dimensions, even a little thicker, but that's because it has a whole game cartridge slot. The triggers on the Game Boy Advance SP are much larger, 4 times the size of the triggers on the Powkiddy. The only sort of I/O the Advance SP has though is the charging port and this little connection port. And unlike the Game Boy Advance SP, the Powkiddy V90 actually has a headphone jack. You do have a Type-C port as well, obviously. But yeah, I just wanted to have a little bit of fun today, tear down the Powkiddy just for the heck of it and show you guys what's inside of it, but also just to compare it to the board of the Game Boy Advance SP, since that is what this is based off of. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. That's all from me. I'm out. Peace.